So, I want to start with a really deep question for you, and that is, what do you think is the meaning of life? And is that a question that you've asked yourself more than once throughout your lifetime? I'm Rosemary Heenan, and my business is Heart Powered Coaching. And that question about what is the meaning of life is probably what has driven me most of my life and led me to where I am today. I started off feeling like I wasn't good enough, that I grew up in the 60s when Twiggy was the role model, and I wasn't that pencil thin shape, and I had a mother who really believed that you could never be too thin or too rich, and that I was never going to achieve happiness unless I became thin. So that script followed me and kept me from feeling happy unless I was thin, which is a bad place to be in, kept me from feeling like I was worthy and deserving of having what I wanted, and it really messed with my self-esteem. And so I went off. My plans for life, I had always wanted to be a teacher. I played teacher when I was a child, have my friends over, they'd sit in desks and we would have lessons, and of course I'd be the teacher. And so I thought I was going to be a history and English teacher. But when I went to university and studied social sciences, I found my real passion. And that, again, was about what's the meaning of life? Why do we act the way we act? What makes us who we are? Why are we here? And that question burned away in my life, and I was always trying to find the answer. I studied, after I finished my social science degree, I took early childhood education, and I became a community college teacher where I worked for over 30 years. And I loved my interactions with my students, and I loved my subject matter, but I always had this side passion for what makes us who we are. How do we get to be this way? And how can I feel better about myself was a burning question, because I just never felt good enough. I never felt like I was worthy of having what I wanted. I always felt as though if I wasn't pencil thin, I was not acceptable. And that cost me a lot in terms of what I did with my life. And at the same time, it also was a good motivator to keep on trying to figure out what life was all about. So in 1999, I met the late Debbie Ford, who wrote The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, and I went on to study coaching with her. And because my job was really demanding, I never could really build a practice because school would be too hard for me to go into building a business as a coach. But that was what I really wanted to do. And then I had the opportunity in 2007 to have a hand analysis reading. And that was the impetus to really change direction in my life and to follow that passion for what makes us who we are, why are we here, become my full-time job. So I left my career at the college and I opened up my own business. And because I was so amazed at what this lady could find in my hands, I studied hand analysis as well and brought that into the work that I do. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about what you would find out in a hand analysis reading. So here's what happened for me. The lady that read my hands sent me a kit. I printed them, sent them off to her. I had my interview with her, sat there with my jaw hanging open, that someone who had never met me could tell me so much about myself that was so accurate, all from my hands. And what she told me was that my life purpose was to be the healer with heart. And the healer is someone who creates a really nice, safe space for people so they can share their innermost thoughts with you. And it's also an inspired communicator. So I think it's part of what helped me to be comfortable in front of a large group of people, to be really good as a teacher, and to always be coming from a heart-centered place with my students. They would tell me that I made them feel good about themselves. And then I found out in the hand analysis reading that that's a part of being in the school of love. All of us who have love as our school have that gift. We accept people the way they are. And because we don't have to work at it, we oftentimes don't think that that's something of value. And yet it is, because if you think about it, don't we all really want to feel accepted and appreciated for who we are? So when she told me that this was my purpose, it made me understand why I had always been searching that way. Wanting to know what makes us tick. Why are we here? What is it that makes us the way we are? And so I felt really validated by that reading. And that was the purpose. The school was love, and the challenge that I have to work on, which we call the life lesson in hand analysis, is to not stuff my feelings. Now, this was so interesting because my mom, who, I know for sure that she loved us, but she didn't have that ability to be warm and affectionate. And so if I was hurting emotionally or physically, she would give me something sweet. And so she taught me that when I hurt, I should eat, right? So I'd stuff my feelings. So perfect, absolute perfect setup for what I wanted to experience in this lifetime. And that's where I am today. I've come to the realization, my belief system is that each one of us is an infinite, unlimited being. And we come from eternity into the experience of time and space in order to have experiences that we would not have if we stayed in spirit. And so, of course, I'm going to set up the perfect environment for me to have these experiences that I've had. And how do I find that out? How do I know that this is what he was supposed to have happen in my life? Well, my fingerprints tell me that. Amazingly enough, it's as if I was like Hansel and Gretel and I left breadcrumbs for me to find myself to my soul in my fingerprints. And that's true for you as well. All of us have non-changing fingerprints. They form when we're in the womb at about 14 to 16 weeks. They don't ever change throughout your lifetime. And the rest of our hand is a map of our personality. So when I read a hand, I can tell how you predominantly think and feel and act or don't act. So I'm going to share something with you now that you can look at yourself so you can have an experience to show how your personality has shaped your heart line. So if you look on the hand, your heart line starts usually over at the far side of your hand and it comes across. And it might come across an end here. It might come across long and flat and end closer to your index finger. It might come up and curve up to your middle finger. And it might come up and curve to your index finger. So I'll share a little bit about what each of those things will mean to you. So if this is your heart line, it's very short and it's very flat. That's called the hermit heart line. So a hermit is somebody who needs a lot of security. They will not share their feelings with other people if they don't feel safe. So take a look at your palm, and you may notice that the heart line on one hand is different from the heart line on the other. So the way it works is, in general, your right hand is you in the world. Your left hand is you with yourself, within yourself, with the people that you feel the closest to and are the most comfortable with. So some of us express our emotions differently when we're out in the world than we do at home. So don't be surprised. There's nothing wrong with you if they're different on each hand. So is your heart line short and relatively flat? Even if it goes upward, if it's going upward in a pretty steady, straight line, then you're a hermit. Hermits need time and space around them. So you know the image of the man coming home from work and going into the man cave? That's a hermit. A hermit needs to come home, de-stress, let go of the day before they're ready to interact with their partner. So this is really good to know in a relationship, because if you have a different heart line and your significant other has the hermit one, you need to give that person that space. They're not being self-centered. They need that in order for them to be ready to come back and interact with you. If you don't give it to them, they're going to shut down and they're not going to share. They're just going to go through the motions, right? Because they aren't feeling safe, because they're not being accepted for who they are. So good information to know. Okay, so this heart line is, again, relatively straight, doesn't curve way up towards the fingers, but it's quite a bit longer than the hermit heart line. And that one's called the romantic idealist. The flatness of it and the length show the person spends a lot of time in their heart, in their feelings, but they're doing it at the level of thinking about how they feel, as opposed to expressing. So again, they're not like super outwardly expressive of their emotions. They're very other-oriented, so they'll think about what other people need, and they probably put that first, and they'll spend lots of time thinking up that very special birthday present for somebody, or how to create a really nice romantic mood or something like that. So they need that time to process, and so you don't expect them to be sharing verbally with you a lot about how they feel. They will do that, but they are thinking at the same time. So you might think with both the hermit and the romantic idealist, you might have a sense of perhaps not as much emotional content to their expression of their feelings. It doesn't mean it's not there. It's just different from people who are a lot more outward expressing. So take a look. Where does your heart line end? If it's closer to your index finger, but still kind of down on the palm, then the chances are that you have a romantic idealist heart line. Okay, our next one is the passionate. So this is my heart line on my right hand. Left hand? Yeah, left hand. Left hand. Okay, so here's a really great example, because this is me as a child growing up. I knew what I wanted. This is called passionate. I know what I want. I want what I want, and I want it now. So you can think about a little kid throwing a temper tantrum, stamping their feet or something like that, but it doesn't have to come across that way. It's just a real connection to what you want and a willingness to speak it. Not accepted when I was a kid. And I'm the oldest of 7, so I needed to be the helper, the one who helped my mama out. And so I learned to put other people's needs before my own, or consider them much more greatly than I might have done had I been just left to my own devices. So I've got a branch on my heart line on my left hand that reaches out and becomes more big-hearted. And this is the big heart. So this is the person who spends the most time in their expression of feelings. They're very, very easy to read. They're really nurturing. They're, you call them everybody's mom. They would take in strays. You just really feel that warmth coming from them. They don't have any trouble whatsoever expressing their emotions. So imagine that you are in a relationship and one of you is the hermit and one of you is the big heart. Knowing this ahead of time can really solve a lot of problems for people that they might run into, because the big heart's going to feel like the hermit doesn't love them because they don't express it often enough. They're very subtle in their expression. And the hermit's going to feel overwhelmed by the exuberance of the big heart, right? Or the passionate could really scare off a hermit. So you can see how, if you knew that about yourself and about the people that you were close to, you could negotiate much better. You would know, let the hermit have his or her cave time. And you would know, to just really welcome in that warmth and that affection from the other person. Maybe it is a little bit more than you feel comfortable with, but they're not smothering you, which you might feel if you have a flatter heart line. So that's a few of the things that you could determine for yourself if you were to take a look at your hands. As I said, you might be different out in the world. Like, I'm a lot more reserved about my feelings when I'm out in the world, and I'm a lot more expressive of them when I feel really comfortable with people. Sometimes people see out in the world really expressive of their emotions, and then when the person's at home, they go way more hermit. And you meet the person out in public, and then you have a relationship with them, and you find them to be very, very different. So if you knew that information, you would be understanding of it, and you wouldn't think there was something wrong, that they stopped feeling the same way about you that they did when you first met them. So those are a few of the things that you would find out in a reading. Your school is going to temper how you deliver whatever you came here to deliver in the world. So my example, I'm in the School of Love. So when I coach people, I want to coach them on an emotional level. That's the stuff that I'm really good at. I make people feel really comfortable. They can share their innermost thoughts with me very easily. And I can hold that really safe space so that they can open up and talk about maybe some of the things that are wounds left over from childhood. Somebody who's in the School of Wisdom as a coach would be much better than I am at helping people create a list of to-dos, action steps they're going to take, help hold them accountable for it. So the coaching style will be really, really different. And the same would be true of anything. If somebody's in the School of Peace, that's the school of the body. So they are often really good at being the people who work on physical things with people. Friends I have that I've done their hands for who are in the School of Peace are personal coaches, yoga practitioners, things like that. So they share their gifts with the world in a physical sense for the most part. So all of this stuff that's in our hands helps us to understand who we are at our core. It's very, very validating to people to feel really heard and understood. And that's what comes when you get your hands analyzed. It's a really personal, deep connection with the person who's reading your hands. And you should walk away feeling, wow, that person has me. They understand me perfectly. And sometimes it's the first time a person has had put into words feelings that they've grown up with. I especially notice that with people in the Peace School, because the people in the Peace School are born without a sense of feeling like they're totally safe in the world. And so when I share that with them, it's like, oh my gosh, finally I know why I feel this way. The people who have a life purpose on their ring fingers, which is the creative, they grow up feeling like when they look around, everybody else is different. And when they're really young, they often think there's something wrong with them because they're not like everybody else. But they didn't come here to be like everybody else. They came here to be on the cutting edge. So they're always a step ahead of the rest of us, or they're always seeing things in ways that the rest of us don't see. But that's really tough when you're a kid, because when you look around and you don't feel like you fit in because you're different than everybody else, it can be really challenging. So those are the two that quite often when I'm reading someone's hands, the tears will flow because finally somebody's articulated how they've always felt and hopefully help them feel like, okay, I was supposed to have these experiences. I was supposed to feel this way. This is what I, as a soul, decided that I wanted to experience when I incarnated into the world. So that's a little bit about the hand analysis part. The perspective that I bring, the paradigm that I bring to the work that I do in the world is what we call level 5 paradigm, and that is that we are infinite, unlimited beings projecting out of time and space, or projecting out of eternity, into the appearance of time and space to have experiences. And in order for that to happen, we have to forget that we are all powerful, or we would just, the minute we didn't like something, boom back into eternity again. It's a really awesome paradigm because the biggest gifts I've received from it is the understanding that nothing ever happens to me. Everything that happens for me. And now, when I go through experiences that in the past I might have felt as though I was a victim or somebody had done something to me, I always ask the question, how is this the best thing that's ever happened for me? And inevitably, I'm going to find out what that is. So one of the ways that this will show up in your life, and I know everybody can relate to this because we've all had these experiences. What have you had happen again and again and again? So just think about that. What's been a repetitive pattern and one that you don't care for? So for me, one of my patterns was that every relationship I was in would end up with the man finding someone else. So as I had said in the beginning, not feeling lovable, not feeling good enough, I would obviously be projecting that, not aware I'm doing it though. And then what ends up happening is people will mirror back to me what's going on inside of me. So how this happens for me is I finally get the message that it's coming from inside of me. That feeling of not being lovable enough will create somebody who starts out loving me, turning it off, right? And finding someone else that they prefer to be with. So when I can look at my experiences and see how could this be for me, it totally takes me out of victim mode and it puts me into the perspective of, oh, look what I'm creating. Okay, I don't prefer that. I don't want to have more of those kinds of experiences. So what will I need to do so that I stop creating that happening and I start creating more of what I desire? Well, now I'm aware that in my unconscious, I believed that I wasn't lovable and therefore I was creating it happening again and again and again until I got the message and then could really work on that self-love that would make that kind of thing stop in the future. So look at what's the common denominator in those repeated events that have happened for you that you don't prefer. And it's always you, right? It's always me that this is happening with, not to. And it's always you. So it takes away any sense of being a victim. It contributes back into a feeling of powerfulness because I know I'm creating this. I know I'm not consciously creating it. I don't set out to make those things happen, but the beliefs that I have inside are creating those experiences to happen. And so when I can look at them and see what the beliefs must be, then I can let go of those beliefs and make things different. So that's the kind of work that I do with people. I help them see how unconsciously they're creating what they're experiencing, help them feel the power that's there. And that power comes from a sense of responsibility. And it's responsibility in its most benevolent, I want to say, expression, which is I am able to respond to situations, as opposed to that, you're responsible kind of thing we may have gotten as children. And it's giving people back their power, and it's giving people back their ability to consciously create more of what they want in life. So that's the story of heart-powered coaching, the kind of a very, very short synopsis of how I got to where I am today. And I hope in listening to this, you've gotten a little bit of insight maybe into why you've always been the way you are. That validation that, if you've had a persistent passion to do something in life, that could be right in your fingerprints, that that's your purpose. And that what you want in terms of expressing your emotions is part of your personality, and how to understand both yourself and other people in their expression of their emotions. So I think I'm just going to conclude by saying that it's a really wonderful experience to go through having your hands analyzed and having that validation process in there, and then working with somebody like me who you want to find the person who's the right fit for you, because you may be much better served by somebody who's really good at helping you accomplish a set of tasks. And that would be going to find the coach that is right for you and for what you want in your life. I just want to work with the people that want to work on the emotional level. And so that, if that's you, then we should talk about doing a coaching session to see if we're a good fit for one another. You always want to be when you're looking for somebody to help you out, you want to see if that person's the right person for you, because we aren't always a match for one another, and there always will be a match for you once you go on that journey to find that person. So thank you so much for watching and listening, and I hope that we connect in the future. And for anybody who does want to, I'm offering 25% off any of Heart Powered Coaching services, a one-time only offer for anybody who references that they saw this video and that's why they're calling. Thank you so much.